All right, everybody, we're here for our next lesson, and today we're going to talk about integers. Integers are one of those things that's really simple to understand, but it's kind of difficult when you start playing around with them. Today, we're just going to talk about what they are and a couple little simple things we can do to them. We're really going to hit the math with it tomorrow, but right now we're just going to deal with simple things. So let's look at our objective as always. What are we trying to learn today? Okay, our objective today is to compare and order integers. Okay, compare is just like compare and contrast in language arts, right? To compare is to put two things and see how they're similar. Order, we're just going to stick things in order from biggest to smallest, smallest to biggest, doesn't matter, it's still order. And integers, integers is a new word. You guys have probably seen it before, but we're going to redefine it just to be sure. And whenever we define something, let's do a Freyer model. Okay, integers. Okay, just like always, just in case you're new to the party, box 1 will be the definition, box 2 will be some traits or characteristics, box 3 is going to be examples, and box 4 will be non-examples. Okay, the definition of integers is really simple. Integers are just whole numbers. Okay, if you think of your whole numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, those are all integers. You can also think about the negative numbers because they are also integers. So -1, -2, -3, -4. All of those are integers, okay? The only thing that they don't have are points. If you have points, it's no longer an integer. It's called a floating point number or a float. Okay, we're not going to deal with those right now. We will later, but right now we're just dealing with whole numbers. Okay, so some characteristics. They're numbers, obviously. So every integer is a number. Okay, there are no points. So you have no decimal points anywhere. And we know they can be positive or negative. Okay, so some examples real quick. 1, 2, 3, 700. Those are all integers, as are -5, -6, -1,728. All of those are integers. Any whole number is an integer. Okay, so if you start thinking every time you would say whole number, just change that word to integer, and you're on the right track. Okay, some non-examples would be like 1.2, because you got your point. Another one would be 0.25, because that's a point. Pi, 3.14, that's a floating point number. 3/4, okay, that is not an integer. That will actually turn into 0.75, which would not be an integer. Okay, so let's look at ordering these. Okay, and if I draw a number line, this is really how we need to conceptualize this. Okay, with 0 being my middle, I always think of the number line as there's this magical barrier between these two worlds. You've got the very negative world on the left and the very positive world on the right. Okay? So in the positive world, we have all of our positive numbers. Okay? Just like normal. And in the negative world, we have our negative numbers, which are exactly the same as the positive numbers. They're just backwards. They're negative. They're the opposite. Okay? And we're going to talk about that. Okay, if I gave you a string of numbers and I told you to put them in order from least to greatest, well, if you look at the number line, the furthest left you can go, so all the way over here, in this case right here, this is the smallest number. And this is the largest number. Okay, so that means if I put points on this line and I have to go smallest to greatest, as long as I read it left to right, like we read English, I start on the left and I read to the right, the numbers that I say on the line will be from least to greatest. So let's look at this. Let's just do a random set of numbers here that I'm just making up on the spot. Okay, so I have a -2. I have a 4. I have a 6. I have a 0. And I have a -5. Okay? Now, if I wanted to say those in order from least to greatest, or smallest to biggest, I can start over here because this is the smallest side. Left is always smaller than right. So if I put these in that order, it's -5, -2, 0, 4, and 6. I could do it backwards too. What if I want to go from biggest to smallest? 6, 4, 0, -2, and -5. Okay, whenever you have to order integers like this, I suggest you make the number line. Okay, or if at least you don't make the number line, you look up above the board because there's a number line there, right? And start thinking about where those would be on that number line. That way you don't get confused. And as you do this a lot of time, just a lot of times of doing it, eventually you'll get kind of sick of drawing a number line and you will get this intuitive number sense of what numbers are bigger and smaller than others. But for right now, I would really just write this over and over and over again. If you need grid paper, ask. I can get you some. That's not a problem. That way you don't have to draw all the lines and stuff. You can just kind of do it real quick. Okay, I really want you to think about this number line and putting things in order. That's going to be really important tomorrow. So every time we need to order integers on our work today in class, I want you to draw a number line. If you need help doing that, ask and I will make sure you get that done. Okay, now let's talk about opposites. Opposites are really easy. They don't take much to figure out. Let's look at 4. Well, what makes 4 4? Well, 4 is 4 because it's 4 marks away from 0, right? It's 4 marks away from my magical barrier. Well, what would its opposite be? Well, its opposite would obviously have to be 4 marks away, and it has to be in the opposite direction, which means that it would be -4. So 4's opposite is -4. -4's opposite is 4. So the opposite of -1 would be +1. Okay, you see how that works? They're the same distance away from 0 as the other, right? This line to this line is the same distance as this line to this line. It always works that way. Opposites, you take your number. If it's positive, you make that number negative. If it's negative, you make it positive, okay? So the opposite of -5 would be 5. The opposite of 7 would be -7, okay? This is pretty easy. The opposite of 10 would be -10. You just take whatever you have and you just flip its sign. Okay, not very hard. That's probably the easiest thing we're going to do today. Now let's talk about what may be the hardest thing we're going to do today. Absolute value. Okay, this is one of those things that's not hard to do, but people mess it up a lot. And I want to make sure that you're not in that boat. Okay, absolute value is always these 2 lines around a number in the center. Okay, and since we don't really have a number right now, I'm just going to put a variable there to hold its spot, a basket so I can throw new things in. And I always think of absolute value as a machine. This kind of looks like a box, and we're going to pretend that that box has a little machine in it. And I'm going to throw numbers into the machine. You know, I'm just going to take a number, whatever it is, and put it in, and then it's going to spit out a number. Okay? And the machine's going to work its magic. So let's say we throw in -2. I throw a -2 into the machine does its thing, and it spits out a number. Well, in this case, it's going to spit out a +2. Okay? Now, look at what we threw in. We threw in a -2. The machine did something. We don't know what that something is. And it spit out a +2. Okay? Now, I want you to predict. I want you to think ahead and see if you can be smarter than the machine real quick. I'm going to give it a number, and I want you to tell me what you think is going to come out the bottom. Okay? This time, I'm going to throw in a +2. I throw it in the machine. The machine does its thing. What's it going to spit out? Okay. How many people say it's -2? If you think it's -2, that's a really good guess, but it's wrong. Okay? Because if that's what absolute value did, absolute value would be the same thing as opposite. Okay? But it's not. The actual answer is going to be +2. Because what absolute value really does is it takes whatever number I throw in and it makes it a positive. Okay? So if I throw in +2, the machine's going to look at it and go, oh, you're already positive, and let you go through. If I throw in a negative, it's going to hit there, and it's going to go, wait a minute, you're negative. And it's going to work its magic, and it's going to make it positive. Everything that comes out of the absolute value machine is going to be a positive number. You will never get a negative number out of absolute value. Okay? Just if you remember that, it's going to be hard for you to make a mistake. So every time you do absolute value, it's going to come out a positive number. So let's do some examples here real quick. I'm just going to throw in some, we just did that one, you should know. Okay, and my pen keeps messing up here. Okay, let's do, Okay, and one more. I'm going to throw it another negative. Why not? Okay, so let's switch colors here, and I want you to predict what's going to happen. Okay, we throw a -2 into the machine. It looks at -2. What do you think it's going to spit out? Well, it's going to spit out a +2 because everything that comes out of absolute value is going to be positive. So it looks at the negative number. It goes, you're negative. Can't go through. You got to change. You got to be positive. And it comes out. Okay, we look at this one. We throw a +6 in. The machine looks at it and says, hey, you're a pretty positive dude. Go on through. We throw a +10 in. The machine's like, right on, dude. Way to be a positive. There you go. 14, also positive. The machine just lets it go through. -16, you throw it into absolute value. Absolute value says, no, you're too negative. You got to be positive. Okay. Same thing. We throw a -8 in. The machine's like, man, you're a downer. You got to turn that frown upside down, if you will. Okay. Another way I like to look at these, just because I'm silly and it makes sense to me, is, I'm going to draw a little picture here, and you guys know my pictures are silly. Boop, boop. I got a little wizard here with the staff. Okay, every time he's going to be like the absolute value machine. If you go through and you're negative, what's he going to say? He's going to say, you shall not pass. Because that's what wizards do. Okay, and then sometimes it's like, oh, well, unless you're positive. Okay. So let's look at this with the wizard instead of the absolute value machine. Let's just look at it a little different. We throw in a -2, and the wizard looks at it and goes, you shall not pass. And then cast a spell and turns it positive. Okay? We throw a +6 in. The wizard goes, oh, okay, you're cool. And lets you through. Same thing. Throw a 10. Oh, okay. 14. Oh, here you go. Let me open the door for you. Okay? -6. You shall not pass. You are negative. You will now be positive. Okay? And then they're like, you shall not pass. And then it makes it positive. Okay? So it's a little silly, but it's anything to make you remember what absolute value does. You can have your own little chubby Gandalf stick person. Okay? That's actually all we're going to do today. We're going to do a lot with absolute value and a lot with ordering. So that's what we're going to work on in class. If you have questions, as always, bring it to your stand-up first thing in the morning tomorrow. You can also hit me up on Twitter. You can hit me on my email, and I will answer you as soon as that comes through. And we will, like I said, we're going to work on this in class. We're going to place a little bit of a game with this. So I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Have a good one.